Hello, welcome back to our Thursday webinar series. Today we've got something exciting for everybody. We've got our rehab manager, Mike Smith, joining us, MJ as we call him here in the office. Just to give you a little backdrop and introduction to MJ, he's single-handedly managed over 250 plus renovation projects in the past 5 years. He's an investor himself, has a portfolio of rentals of JWB properties, and is just a fantastic teammate. So, Mike, you there, pal?
I am. Hello, everyone.
They can't talk to you, bud.
I know.
Well, as always, we want to make this call as interactive as possible. So in the lower portion of your GoToWebinar toolbar, there's a area called questions. Feel free to submit as many as you have. We want to make Mike feel very welcome and give him the same hospitality that we've given every other guest during this series. So feel free to submit throughout the call, and we'll make sure that we field any. MJ, it's kind of a rule of thumb. We do it with every guest that we have. I want you to kind of walk us through kind of a tough experience that you've had over the past 250 years before we start singing your praise and sharing your laurels. Tell us kind of a horror story or a funny experience that you've had.
Okay, a horror story. It's probably better suited, I guess, for this situation. I guess before I and Alex, who used to manage all the rehabs, knew what we were doing, we would use less than par contractors, subpar, and they would not really be the best at managing their finances. So we this one particular case, we were using a company, and they were managing 2 jobs for us at one time. One was a retail deal, and one was actually a JWB deal. And they got behind on their payments, or not necessarily payments. They got behind on their
cash flow.
Yeah, their cash flow, and they came to us, and they wanted another draw, and we got comfortable with them using them. We had been using them, I guess, for a while, and so we gave it to them, not thinking that they would run off. Well, we thought wrong, because they did. And the worst part about it was they didn't pay the subs. So we had a great relationship with all of our subs at that point, and they were using a bunch of guys that we had used on past jobs, and we didn't want to ruin that relationship with them. So we came out of pocket basically and paid those subs for both of those properties. We're still owed money from this one particular company, so it's a good learning experience for us, because now we know not to get ahead of ourselves on what we have is a draw schedule for our contractors, and so now we make sure that we stay within our range to make sure we have enough money left in the job, so we don't have to essentially flip the bill for someone else.
Sure. Sure. Well, and obviously you couldn't have parlayed that better. I didn't know which story you were going to share. One of the first things that we get all the time from our investors, and it's the same concept we use as far as hiring staff, is the most important component of your renovation is really bringing on the right teammates to handle your projects. Obviously the more capable and competent your contractors are, the less headache you're going to have, particularly when you're managing so many different jobs all at once. So can you tell us a little bit about your hiring and screening process when you're bringing on general contractors and also subs?
Yeah, definitely get into that, but I wanted to touch on that first point you made, with the teammates. It's huge, and if you don't have the right teammates in any business, you're probably not going to succeed. So it's a very huge part of everything that we do around here. But getting into the screening process, we get most of our contractors through referrals now, and we work with a lot of people in Jacksonville that are investors like ourselves, and we talk to them and we find out who they're using to do their rehabs, and that's how we find a lot of our guys. And not only do we have, after they have a good reference, we bring them in for a sit-down interview with me and John, who is now the project manager who's on the job sites doing doing most of the getting his eyes on the project, and we talk to them and we give them a thorough interview, and then we make sure that we get all of their licensing, insurance, comp exemptions, and then we also call a couple of the references to make sure that they have good things to say about them as well. And that's something we constantly do, because it's always something that you need to do to make sure that you're keeping things fresh, I guess is a good way to put it. You don't want your guys to get comfortable, because then you get comfortable with them, and then you get into that situation that I just explained earlier, where you're overpaying them, and then they're thinking that they can just kind of lax off, and then you're not having to, the jobs slow down, and then it's just a spiral effect at that point. So
sure, it all heads downhill quick. What MJ, tell us a little bit about what your team consists of right now, as far as how many crews do you have going? How many properties or projects does each crew have going on at once? And where would you like it to be?
I guess what we have right now, we have 5 general contractors that we use. Each of them have a different amount of jobs that we think is a good fit for them.
Okay.
Some of them have upwards to 5 to 6. And most of them have anywhere from 1 to 2, just depending on their staff and their scalability. Where the amount of jobs that we manage right now is about 8 to 10, and we can manage that comfortably. We could probably jump up to 12 if we needed to. I want to be at probably anywhere from 15 to 20 by the end of the year, managing jobs at one time. So that would be 15 to 20 jobs being managed at one time.
Wow. So when you say you want to be managing 15 to 20 crews or 15 to 20 jobs at once, do you feel that your current, 5 different crews are capable of handling that scalability, or are you looking to add additional GC crews to your staff?
Well, like I said before, we're always looking for try out new guys to see if they're a good fit,
okay,
a good teammate. But I don't think right now we could currently handle it, but I think if we needed to, we could sit down with the guys we have, and we could see where they're at and see what they could handle. We might be able to get close to that, but
okay,
it's I guess it's kind of it's something I would have to look into and do some research on to make sure that we can handle it.
Sure, completely understand. Let's kind of talk about the process, MJ, that you guys put together. All the way from the point where you go out and before you offer a house, you of course go out to the house, compile a repair estimate, and then of course after we receive the offer or receive the house, put it under contract, is typically when you and our project manager John will go out to the house and put together the scope of work. How do you and the general contractor kind of come together on the final total for the job? Of course, you've got a total from the repair estimates. When you go out and do a full scope of work, that could certainly change, marginally. And then, of course, when you sit down with the GC, they could see certain changes to your original plans. How do you guys kind of come together on that final number and final vision?
Kind of what you just explained. Take a lot of I guess from the beginning, Alex or myself, go out to a job and we do a repairs estimate, and then based off of that repairs estimate, the vision has already been kind of set depending on what kind of house it is, if it's a retail, a rental, or whatever we might get into, some kind of commercial deal. And then from there, we use those numbers to come up with a scope of work, and then the scope of work will kind of dictate where we need to go from there. And like you said, sometimes after we make our scope of work, our general contractors catch stuff that needs to be done while they're out there in the bidding process as well. And that's real important, because it helps us. We don't see everything when me and John are out there, and if they catch something, I'd rather see it up front and make sure it's getting taken care of up front, instead of having to deal with it later on, coming up as where we have to send John out there on a special trip just to investigate this one item. That's a time waster for him, and we all have other things that we could be spending our time getting better at other aspects of the business. So
Sure. Sure.
so yeah, they'll catch things and they'll come in, they'll sit down and let me know what they saw, and we'll agree on a number at that point, and then from then on the job starts.
Okay. What is your typical, I guess, what's your target margin of error? I mean, obviously, as we talked about, certain costs and scopes can change throughout the course of, from the point of repair estimate to an actual completion of a job. What percentage variance is acceptable in your eyes, and where does the team currently kind of fit?
We'll accept it. The variance of acceptability, I would like it to be zero. You know, I don't want to have any variance, but it's not realistic for that to happen, because there's always things that you're not going to see, and you know, I mean, if anything, I would want it to be under, you know, but that's not going to happen either. So
sure.
Where we're at right now, that's a great question, and me and my team, Alex and John and our intern Colin, we're actually meeting this week and going over the last 20 jobs to see where that variance is. And we've gotten through 2 so far because we're revamping our whole process. So the last 24 hours has been rough. It's been kind of tiring, but we're one job we went way over on, and another job we came 5% under, so, or 6% actually. So it's kind of all over the board. I can't really give you an accurate depiction. I would say, if anything, we're probably about 7 to 10% over.
Okay. All right. So investors, let me just paint you a picture of the last week here for Mike Smith. He got married 2 weekends ago. He's just moved his lovely new wife into his house. He's working on putting in offers for his own primary, and as he just shared with you, he's completely revamping his entire rehab business with his team over the past 3 or 4 days. So we're fortunate to have him, and Mike, thank you so much for always sharing your insight.
Absolutely, yeah.
Let's talk about some of the high-cost items. Obviously, you know, most of our audience is Jacksonville Wealth Builders investors or prospective investors looking for more of a long-term buy and hold model. You know, as we talk about each and every week, you know, one of the larger risks is certainly the high cost items that could pop up over the course of time from a maintenance perspective. How do we, you know, and your team, what do we do to kind of alleviate that cost up front, and how do you determine whether or not those items need to be replaced, repaired, and let's just kind of itemize them out. Let's talk first and foremost about the roof, which is a huge expense.
Okay, yeah, we get a good look at it when we get out there for the first time, when we're doing our actual repairs estimate before we've actually purchased the property.
Okay.
You know, we have ladders in our trunks, and we get on the roof and we check it out. We walk around on it to make sure there's no soft spots. Make sure if it's a shingle roof, that the granules aren't coming off, and you can also do one step further where you can check the last permit pulled on the roof to see when the last roof was installed. And you know, you can't always see that because the city of Jacksonville went to I guess a database system at a certain point, so you're not always going to be able to tell when the last roof was put on, and sometimes these roofs were put on 25 years ago, and I think it was, you know, after that they went to this system.
Sure.
But usually the best way that we do it is a visibility check, getting on the roof and searching around for any soft wood, making sure, you know, there's no water spots inside the house on the ceiling. And you know, that's kind of how we do it from there. Once we purchase the house, though, we actually have our roofer go out and check out every single one of our houses to make sure that we didn't miss anything when we did our initial inspection. So that's a huge thing for us, because we want to make sure that we don't have any investors that are upset with us because we should have replaced a certain area on the roof, because it's just part of aligning our goals, and that's something that we all talk about in the office. So it's just something we want to do, and then also on top of that, it creates a headache for Mike Stetson, our property manager. He has to handle that tenant issue when it comes up, and then essentially he comes to me where I have to then call the roofer. So it all comes full circle. So I want to make sure that it gets taken care of up front.
Sure. Kind of preempt any potential issue. And you know, a lot of times we've actually come across where just through initial inspection from Alex or MJ, when they're at the house, they acknowledge that the roof just needs a quick repair. Our licensed roofer will go out there, do a full inspection, and it'll come out that we have to replace the entire roof. So that
Yes.
we go above and beyond just to make sure that the final product for you investors is certainly with the long-term mindset.
Absolutely.
How about the AC unit? Obviously, we live in a place that has 100-degree heat for the better part of the year. So how do you determine whether or not to replace or repair an AC unit?
I would say 98% of the houses we put new ACs in. It's like you said, it's such a high-ticket item, and it's not something you want to mess around with, because there's no real way you have any visibility into it to see whether or not it's going to work or if it's going to last or anything like that. If it's less than 5 years old, the actual unit itself, we will try to keep it, attempt to keep it, and then what we'll do is we'll sometimes pull the coils out, acid wash the coils inside the unit, that are in the unit, and then put them back in, and then put new Freon in the system and recharge it and get it up and running and make sure it's serviced correctly. But other than that, I mean, if it's about anywhere over 5 years old, we probably go ahead and replace it. And then another item that we do that kind of ties into AC is insulation. You can have the best AC unit out there and oversized for your house, but if your house is not properly insulated, it's not going to cool properly. So we always make sure that our roofs are properly insulated with R30, which is the requirement here in Jacksonville, Florida.
That's a good point. Absolutely. So trying to prolong the length of the new AC unit that's installed at these properties, typically with the proper insulation.
Absolutely, that will help prolong it as well too. But we also avoid the issue where the tenant calls in saying that the house won't cool down because it can't cool it down because it's basically baking in the sun in the middle of the summer here in Florida. So
Sure. Well, I was actually looking at our inventory over the past 3 months, and I've seen that we've bought houses that were built from anywhere from 1948 all the way to 2008. So that's a pretty wide range. Certainly, electrical and plumbing is a huge component and a huge potential cost and liability for an investor if it's not updated and done properly. What are some of the things on both of those components that you're looking at when determining whether or not to update and repair? Or what are the red flags that you come across?
well, they're really two completely different items. I'll start with electrical. When we buy a house that's older, back I would say anywhere from 75 and behind that, it would be where we have one of our electricians basically hot check the whole house, make sure there's no breakers being tripped, make sure there's no open air splices in the attic or anything like that, which is an open air splice is something where a previous homeowner would try to, wire the house himself or herself and make sure that and put a light in the middle of the living room when there wasn't one there, but not do it properly. So that's one of the things we have our electrician do, is look for items like that, because that's potential for a fire. And that we don't mess around with electrical items. We like to take care of them. There's no real way to kind of look past them either, because if your house burns down because of that, just one time you've already tarnished your image. So there's no way we can look past something like that.
Sure. And on electrical, Mike, what is talk about when we're updating a panel? What are kind of I know it's a Federal Pacific we always update, and then the certain amperage that we're looking for on a panel to handle the house's electricity.
If like Adam said, it's a Federal Pacific panel, they've had a couple of lawsuits against them because their panels, I guess, aren't safe, and they've caused fires. And we always change those out. Always change out those panels to the updated, brand new one, actually. As far as the next question, where we are, repeat it to me again.
I was just asking the minimum amperage.
The amperage.
Absolutely, that we make sure that all of our panels have.
If it's anything less than 150, and typically, and there's kind of a different range here. If it's like a 2-2 apartment or something like that, a 2-2 apartment can handle like 125 amps. But if it's a normal house where it's a 3.2, 4.2, something like that, if it's less than 150, we always upgrade the service to 200 amps,
Sure.
which is where you provide more power to the house so that you're not tripping breakers every time you turn on your oven or take a shower and your hot water heater starts running hard and you dry clothes. You want to make sure you're providing enough electricity to that house so it's not popping breakers all the time.
Which is huge for investors looking to hold long term, because obviously, a trip breaker and a maintenance call to an electrician, those start to add up if it's a continual problem. And then if you had to come out of pocket to update the panel, 2 to 3 years after acquiring the property, that's a huge risk and cost. So it's something that our rehab team is trained to do, to make sure that we always have the proper electrical amperage up front so that you don't have to worry about that. How about plumbing, Mike? Talk a little bit about plumbing.
Plumbing, there's a lot of different as time has gone on, plumbing has gotten a lot better. And back in the 40s, they would use galvanized piping, and it was it's not so good because it doesn't really leak or anything. It's not anything like that, but the minerals in the water would create an effect in the pipe where the pipe would eventually start to shrink and it would start to corrode smaller and smaller, so your water pressure gets lower and lower as the years go on. With we always replace the galvanized piping. We always replace what's called polybutylene. That's a no-no. You can't have that in it. That was a new thing after galvanized, but it didn't end up working out so well. That has tendencies to leak. Most insurance companies won't even insure a house if it has polybutylene in it, so we always rip that out and replace it. Copper now was kind of the next thing that came along, and copper's pretty good. It's just not as if something hits it, it's not going to bounce back. It's going to dent and potentially start to leak. But with now what's most commonly used is CPVC. If something bumps into it, it's going to flex and move out of the way, as opposed to taking the brunt of the force, and it won't crack or anything like that. Now don't get me wrong, it will crack if you hit it the right way. But that's what we put in all of our houses whenever we're changing out the supply lines. And then there's also drain lines that come into effect. We have in Florida what's called Orangeburg pipe, and they would use that in the drains from the street to the actual house. And basically it's just this cloth paper that any kind of tree root could grow right through, and we found in our experiences that whenever we find that, we need to replace it because it causes an issue down the road where a tree root will grow into it, and we know that it's probably just going to end up getting clogged up. And like with any of these other items, it's going to be a headache for our investor, our tenant, our property manager, and the tenant as well. And we don't want to have headaches for any of those people. So,
and investors out there, that's the first time I've ever heard of that. So as you can imagine, our team, the nice thing about having a team that specializes is we each have components of the business that we're extremely knowledgeable about. Clearly, Mike has just a plethora more knowledge than I will ever have or ever desire to have when it comes to renovating a home. So, that's the one value of having a team. Let's play a little hypothetical here, Mike. So,
okay.
Obviously, as we talked about before, the process of putting in a repair estimate to the end game where there's the actual finished cost of the project. There could be some cost variance, certainly. So let's say an investor, someone on the call, decides to invest with us and gets qualified and takes a leap of faith on a house that we have purchased, but we've yet to start the renovation on. They buy the house, and it's they commit to a certain renovation number. So the house all in is 80, but 30,000 of that is renovations. And the renovation, after the roofer goes out there and takes a look at the house and determines that it's important to replace the roof when you guys thought we could just repair it, who pays for that additional $5,000? Does a roofer do it for free? Does the Jacksonville Wealth Builders team pick up the cost, or is the investor on the hook?
Jacksonville Wealth Builders picks it up. We know that we're not going to catch everything, so we don't expect our investors to to pick up that cost, after they've committed to a number. So it's something that we'll do, and we've always done. And Adam talked about it before when we were going through something earlier, and then also just now where the roof has come up where we've actually had to replace it, and it's happened to us a couple of times where the roof needed to be replaced. And not only the roof, the roof looks good when you see it, but when you start tearing the shingles off and the felt paper underneath off, you see that the person who did the roof before didn't do it right, and they didn't replace all the rotted wood underneath it. Well, that's a huge issue, because once that wood starts to rot and your nails start to pop, you have leaks.
Sure.
And that's what happened to a couple of our roofs. And $5,000 and $8,000 later on some of these houses, we flipped the bill for the investors, and sometimes they don't even know about it. Like that house on Busac, I don't even know if I mentioned the name of it in the original story before, where we talked about the contractor running off and not paying the subs. I don't even know if the investor knows about that, but we flipped the bill for it.
That's good to know. That's fantastic. Well, good. And I just actually got a question in here from one of our investors, Mike. They obviously, this is someone who's seen our houses, whether it be through the internet or up close and personal. But what's the rationale to putting together kind of a cookie cutter home on the renovation? With the same color schemes and the same materials. What's kind of the thought process to that as the rehab manager? You there, pal?
Everything on our end, from the top to the bottom, easy. It makes it easy to make a repairs estimate, because we know what the cost is of all of our material, and we know what the cost is for the labor to install that material. It makes it easy to make a scope, because we can use the same template for our scope of work, and we just plug in the different items for every house that we come up with. And then it makes it easy for the contractor to go out and start and finish the job, because they know exactly what we expect every single time. So it's not where we have to go out there and pick out tile colors and paint colors and all that stuff. And then on the end process, it makes it easy for either our investors or our property manager, Mike Stetson, to rent the property out, because he knows exactly what to expect from every single house, and he knows how to describe it to all of our potential tenants or residents to make sure that they are happy with the product. And I think we've shown that they're happy with our product, because we rent houses out before they're even started renovating most of the time. I don't know what the stat is on that. Maybe Adam can fill us in here.
It's happened at least 5 times in the past 2 months where a tenant has walked into virtually a bank-owned property that's been vacant for a year and signed a lease within the next day or two, because following showing them that house, we were able to show them what that house would look like by having them walk into one of our other fully renovated houses where the tenant had just yet to move in.
Yeah.
Go ahead, bud.
I was just going to say, that's, to sum it up, it just makes it easy all around, So.
That's a good point. And, another thing that from the property management perspective is we want to make sure that all the houses are Section 8 qualified, so and they're capable of passing the Section 8 inspection. So that's another rationale into making sure that we, produce very similar products routinely for the Jacksonville Wealth Builders program. The funny thing, obviously, is if you're driving through the city of Jacksonville and you see a house with a bright red door and red shutters, more than likely it's one of our properties, right, Mike?
Yeah. done over 250 here in the last couple of years, so there's a lot of them out there.
Absolutely. Well, how about this question, Mike? Let's say an investor comes in and they've maybe have done rentals in the past and they have a specific way of how they want something done. Do you ever customize your renovation for an investor?
Yeah, we've done that. We've done that before. Sometimes the investor wants to put maybe a little more tile throughout. I don't exactly know the specifics of how we work it out, but I know that we've done it, and we're willing to do that, because it's not that big of a deal to add a little bit more. It's a little bit more tile or something like that, but it's something that we've done. We don't do it a lot, though, because most of the time we jump on these and get them renovated before we get to it's actually sold. So it's
Okay.
not something we do a whole lot.
Okay.
But we don't ever change. One thing I mean, we don't ever change like our color schemes or anything like that. We don't customize a house, so to speak.
Okay.
We may add a little bit of tile or something like that. Nothing really changes other than that. We don't go around and put 6-panel doors in or anything like that. We don't want to make it harder on our contractors. It's very limited to what we'll do.
Okay.
I guess is a good way to put it.
Okay. So in a rare instance, but even at that point in time, there are limitations to it, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
We don't want to make it harder on the contractor because then it starts costing money. And what we want to do here, and I don't know if anybody has been to any of our JWB events, but we want to align our goals and we want to make sure that we can pass cost savings on to our investors. And when we get into things like that, it starts costing more money, and it doesn't help pass on the savings. So.
Sure, sure. And we actually just got a question here asking about how we seek feedback on establishing what we view as the cookie cutter components. Whether it be carpet or color schemes or things of that nature. And a great example of that for the investor asking the question is, we seek feedback from the tenant, from the investor. And ultimately, just make sure that everyone's goals are aligned. Most recently, we've changed the carpet. We used to use this very dark, what was it, brown or red or maroon, MJ?
It was called Brown Cow.
It was called Brown Cow, but it looked pretty red to me, right? And that's maroon.
It had a maroon tint to it. I don't know why it was called Brown Cow, but that's what it was called.
And actually, one of our investors made a comment one time, and he's an investor who's bought a handful of houses throughout the nation, and he said, I love what you guys have done. The house looks fantastic, but what are you doing with Brown Cow? And and at the same time, within about a day or two, we sought feedback from a tenant who we had shown a few homes, and they decided not to move into one of our homes because of the Brown Cow color on the carpet. So we made the decision right then and there. I mean, no need to wait for any additional feedback. So we went to, it's still a darker carpet, but it's a more appealing darker carpet. What's the color scheme now, MJ?
I'm not. It's so new. I haven't had a chance to. I mean, I just picked it off of a palette, but I'm not sure what the name of it is. But like you said, it's just a little bit lighter and it's more appealing. It matches our color scheme much better, and we've gotten like you said, so much feedback about the darker carpet. Because what we would do is to get such great pricing, we would order a lot of it. We'd have our carpet guy order rolls upon rolls.
Sure.
And we had to burn through that before we could move into this new color. And since we got that one little piece of feedback from a tenant, we've gotten more. And so we made the decision to move to a different color at the right time, I guess. So.
Yeah, and it's helped out. We've been able to rent out houses just a wee bit quicker, just because it meets the eye a little bit nicer. So, and obviously, to all of your investors, the reason we select the darker carpet in the carpeted areas is because it saves you from having to replace the carpets more frequently, because it'll hide the stains. If there's a move in and a move out, there's occasionally a time where we'll be able to keep the existing carpet as opposed to having to completely put in new carpet. Which would, at that point, after a couple years of ownership, come out of your expense. So, again, just the whole concept and the most important thing as you listen to MJ talk about the specifics is we're really trying to make sure that we limit any potential maintenance issues. Of course, they're going to happen. There's no question. We advise all investors to set aside 10% of their monthly rental income for that 1 month that their property might sit vacant, but more importantly for any future maintenance issues that could pop up. Owning real estate, anyone who has a house or even rents a house knows that there are from time to time things that pop up that don't function 100% correctly. So they do happen, but MJ and his team do such a fantastic job really limiting any future expense for our investors. And MJ, thank you so much for spending some time with us. I want to, obviously, before we leave, talk about a couple of our events that we have coming up. We're thoroughly excited about taking the show on the road. We're headed out to Irvine, California on Saturday, April 30th. And then the following weekend, we will have our event here in Jacksonville, Florida. The Irvine event, we've got 60 registrants already. We've got a room at about 65, so we have about 5 spots remaining. If you have interest and live on the West Coast, I highly advise you to register at wealthbuildingtour.com or give us a call at the office at the number on the screen. The Saturday, May 7th event, we have about 10 spots open, so they fill up quick, and we certainly look forward to seeing you. If you have any additional questions, you can always email us at info@jacksonvillewealthbuilders.com or give us a buzz at that number. MJ, thank you so much. I know it's been a busy sequence of weeks. Just married, you're headed for your honeymoon in a week. You're actually MJ will not be part of either of these events because he'll be on his honeymoon, no less. So
yeah, sorry guys, I definitely apologize for that one.
He's a busy guy, but thanks for the valuable insight, and appreciate everybody spending their lunch hour with us as usual. Next week we've got a great webinar lined up where we're actually going to have a question and answer session with one of our investors from the Bronx. So feel free to tune into that. He's going to tell us about his experience over the past year with us. So look forward to talking to you soon, and wish you the best. Have a great weekend, everyone.